Bem-vinda and croeso, and welcome to our EAS webinar on blended learning resources for primary maths and numeracy. Can I ask all attendees to put their name, school and consortia in the chat so we know who has attended today. Today we will be sharing EAS resources from our LNS schools, as well as EAS advisors products that have been working on during the COVID crisis. We hope that this will support you further in your schools, but also gives the opportunity to share some best practice within the region. We've developed a blended learning resources website. The resources are broken down into the different AOLEs. This site has come about because we've had requests from both the head teacher strategy and teachers regarding additional teaching resources to support during the current crisis. The teachers felt they needed stuff that they could just pick up and run with. So we've only included on this website newly developed resources that both our schools, our LNS schools, as well as ourselves, have begun to develop to support schools further in the region. As time goes on, we're continuing to produce additional resources, and we're hoping to constantly add to this site as time goes on during this crisis. So please keep coming back to it to find different resources for the different AOLEs. As part of the site, we've also included a current blended learning guidance documentation, and there's been a section added to show you how to download these resources and either use them instantly or adapt them to use within your own settings. Behind each AOLE tile, the resources have been separated into primary and secondary, just for the ease of navigation, but obviously we have, and you'll be able to adapt some of the resources to fit whichever phase you need. As part of our thinking when designing these resources, we've considered the different ways you need to plan in the current crisis, which is in line with the guidance. All of the resources we've developed can either be delivered in person, in a classroom, and can be paper-based or digital, or they can also be delivered virtually if learners are absent from school, both either as a complete year group out, or if some of your learners are in and some of your learners are out. We have also considered the different digital tools that could be used in the situations to enable these presentations and collaborations to occur both in the digital and virtual world, as well as the non-digital virtual world, and also the real world with everyday practice. And if you'd like any further support with the different digital platforms and tools, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. But I'd also like to direct you to the new distance and blended learning Google site that we've got, which has got a separate digital strategy section within it. And in there are various toolkits, as well as different scenarios documents that are there to show you which tools to use for which scenario. And again, if you'd like any further information on that, please don't hesitate to get in touch. So the Curriculum for Wales proposes a broad definition of curriculum, and that includes everything a learner experiences in pursuit of the realisation of these four core purposes. The curriculum encourages schools and practitioners to reflect on the what, the how, and most importantly, the why of the curriculum. In developing these blended learning resources, both EAS advisors and LNS schools have considered in depth the purpose, principles, vision and ethos of the 2022 Curriculum for Wales, and have begun to trial some ideas and elements that will come through in these resources. The consideration of the curriculum has included the wider questions and considerations linked to the vision of the curriculum, including those cross-cutting elements, progression, assessment and pedagogy, and these resources support the development of cross-curricular and integral skills. As stated previously, there are resources linked to each AOLE, and each resource supports the development of the key knowledge, understanding and skill as framed in the statement of what matters, and are based on the understanding of progression, as explained in the principles of progression and associated descriptions of learning. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our very own EAS advisor, Cressy Murphy, and she's going to talk you through the first section of some of the resources we've uploaded on there. Over to you, Cressy.
Thank you, George. So I'm going to talk to you about the mathematics specific resources that we've been developing. These are designed to support learning both in and out of the classroom, as Georgie explained. And they are structured so that there are a series of slides and other resources which can be deleted depending on whether you are teaching live in the classroom, live via an online platform, or whether the students are accessing the resources in their own time. At the moment, for primary, we have resources available in the handling data and in the number sections, but please do keep checking back because we will add to these over time. Each topic area is split into a number of learning episodes. We have deliberately structured it with learning episodes so that you can then fit that to the right timings for your setting. Each learning episode is also then linked to a waggle, which is what a good one looks like, so that learners can refer back to that when they're completing their work. And then to round off each topic area, there is also a low stakes quiz for them to complete. So within each learning episode, they have been split into a very similar structure for each one. So there will be a starter with either a live or an on-demand digital version. There'll be the key vocabulary, the definitions. There is also two options of a Freya model available, a blank one, which you can ask learners to complete themselves, or one which has already been completed that you could share. There is also two options for modelling the mathematics then. One where you can obviously demonstrate that live yourself, or a short video with which the pupils can watch. Then there is an opportunity to check for their understanding before they move on to an independent task. So that could be a live version, or it could be a Google form, and you can direct them to have completed to a certain degree of accuracy before they move on, and then point them in the direction of further support should they need that before undertaking the independent task. So I'm going to take you through an example of one of the learning episodes, and this one is on factors. So as you can see here, there is a live starter. This you could do either via an online platform or in the classroom. Absolutely brilliant if they can work together in groups for this. And then there is also an option for an on-demand version where they would be able to access a Jamboard so that they can still work collaboratively and see what their peers are putting. As we know, working together can really increase engagement of the learners. So here's an example of some of the things that some pupils might put, and as you can see, they can see what the other pupils are doing whilst they're doing it. So then there's some of the key vocabulary. This is a very simple one. Some of them are more simple and some of them are more complex. There's a definition there as well, which obviously you can do yourself as a teacher, or you can give this out to them if they are capable of going through that themselves. These are the Freya models that I talked about. This is one which they could fill in themselves, or you could complete as a class or in groups. And then there is a link to a completed one if you wish to use that. This is the example of the modelling slide. So this is obviously blank, so you as a teacher would be able to model that under a visualizer on an iPad or on the board in the classroom. And then you will see that if you are leaving this to pupils to complete at home, then there's a little video that they can watch doing the same thing. If you wanted to record your own video so they could hear your own voice, you could then insert that on this slide. There's also a checklist for them, so some success criteria to work through. And then the checking for understanding section. So this is just some questions that you might complete on mini whiteboards in the classroom. And if they were at home, you might ask them to do it on whiteboard 5. which is a program that can basically turn their phone or their tablet into a mini whiteboard for you to look at. There's also a link there to a Google form version. You would need to make sure that you copied the Google form to your own account as a teacher. Otherwise, your students' responses will come to myself or one of our team and not to you. So that's something to be careful of. Okay, and then at the end, we have got a progress check. Oh, sorry, that's an example of the Google form that I was talking about, the progress check. And then when you're happy that they're ready to move on to independent work, then there is a task available as well. So that's one of the learning episodes. Following the learning episodes, then you will also see that there is the waggles available. And then there is also then a low stakes quiz at the end of the topic. So for example, this one covers multiples, factors and primes once you've covered all of those learning episodes. Obviously, these topics are deliberately designed to be independent of one another so that you can take them and use them for your setting in the order that you usually would. I know that some schools might, for example, cover factors at the same time as multiples, and other schools deliberately separate them out. So it would be important for you to consider then the interleaving of topics, regular retrieval practice to go back to those topics, opportunities for problem solving without a topic context, and obviously opportunities to apply those skills across the curriculum. Are there any questions?
Hi, Cressy. We've had some questions in the chat, but they've been related to the link for the website. So the link for the website, which will take you through to the primary maths section, is in the chat. But please have a look at the website and consider all AOLEs, as we do have resources sitting behind most of those tabs.
Lovely. Thank you, Cressy. Thanks, Sue. We're now going to pass over to Sue Jones, our own professional learning advisor for STEM and technology and maths, in terms of the resources that she's been developing alongside our NNS schools. So over to you, Sue. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, George. Just wait for the slide. Okay, so I just want to draw your attention to following on from Cressy's lessons and resources that she was showing on factors. We've got an investigation available on there looking at abundant numbers. So within the presentation or the resource then, there is some background information. So there'll be a teacher guidance on what learners would need to have a secure understanding of before attempting the material, and some key information that you'll need as teacher guidance and teacher notes. With the activities and resources, we've added sound into them, so it breaks the barrier down if learners are unable to read it for themselves. Can still access the material at home without the support of an adult around them to be able to read it to them. So this is just an example of one of the starter activities there, where we'll be familiar with the idea of a concept cartoon or concept mapping, and the learners have to look at them, decide which one they agree with and which one they don't. We've tried to do it so this can be carried out independent of any support, or could be used in the classroom without the voiceover. So we've got then the responses, so it goes through which ones are correct and which ones are incorrect for the learners there. As we move on then, there's some examples of learners' work, so they can have a discussion and talk about, and there's notes within the slides of the presentation that will give some direction, but also pinpoint to different technological sort of apps you could be using to work alongside to get the discussion. So you could be using Jamboard there, and that's suggested in the notes. And then we move on to the actual investigation, and for this webinar it is just in as a whole slide. This comes through in sections and chunks, which gives you time to talk about it, but also gives the waggle. So it goes through a couple of different examples so the learners can be really secure before they do it themselves. Within the maths, we've got a couple of examples of teaching the math skills, but I just wanted to draw your attention to some of the other resources available on the website. So this sits under the STEM, the Science and Technology tab, and this is a foundation example of food and farming, where it's covering most AOLEs, but there's focus on different subject disciplines. So we've got here the maths, which has got the small world, but what we try to do within this resource is really highlight key questions that either the key adults within the classroom or key adults working with your youngest learners at home could be using. And also within the speech bubbles, we have the key vocabulary that we would be expected and we'll be expecting to share with the learners. So you haven't got to provide any additional notes for parents then to sit alongside if you did find yourself in a situation where children were self-isolating. We've also got a football data reasoning task. So there is no limit to this. The aim of this project is to be looking at the reasoning skills and developing those at a level, at the learner's level. So you've got in here based on football scores, and they have to go through and work through the activity but justify their reason. So it's a really effective resource then for developing those thinking skills and those reasoning skills. And Cressy mentioned earlier the downloading the copies of the resources. If you use the resources as they are, that all the responses that the learners put in will come through to us. So please just take a minute to have a look at how to get a copy of these resources on the main homepage of the Blended Learning Resources website. There's a short video clip there to just go through with you step by step on how to download and save copies to your file so you can share them through your platform. So and all the response material will come back to you. Thank you, George.
Excellent, thank you, Sue. Is there any questions in the chat, Cressy?
At this moment, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Excellent, thank you, Sue. Now our next presenter is Angie Smith from Raglan Primary School, and she's going to be talking about her blended learning journey and the resources they've developed as part of this experience. So I'm going to be handing over to you, Angie. Thank you.
Haha.
Oh, lovely, we've got Angie back. Excellent.
Hey. Sorry.
I shall mute myself now and hand over to you.
I think my computer's feeling a little overworked today or something. It just completely froze. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm Angie from Raglan Primary School. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you this afternoon and share some of the wonderful things that we've been doing at Raglan during this strange year that we've all been having. Let me just go to my first slide. My contact details are just there. If you wanted to get in touch with me after this evening, if anything crosses your mind and you didn't get a chance to ask it today, please contact me there. So before I start talking about our blended learning approach, I just wanted to go through how we usually teach maths and what we would normally be doing in a regular year. That's just been taken from our policy. We aim to make all our children really confident mathematicians and to enable them to believe that they can always solve a problem. So they may not be able to find a solution the fastest way, but they have got the knowledge and the skills to find the solution a way, and it's just making sure they have that belief so they don't get overwhelmed and they don't become like rabbits in headlights as soon as they see something which looks a bit unusual or a little bit challenging. And it's always my aim at the start in September to make sure by the time they leave in July they love maths, and it's always one of their favourites when you ask them. And sometimes I have some challenging ones, but it's always my aim to try and get them to love maths by the end. So in Raglan we use the CPA method, the concrete pictorial abstract. It just means that right at the start in reception and foundation phase we use lots and lots of practical resources. So we might be using cars or teddies, conkers, acorns, leaves at this time of year, anything to make maths real so they can understand that 5 is bigger than 2 if they're holding different amounts of things in their hands, and making real life sentences, number calculations, but using these real concrete things that they can hold in their hands. And as it says there, It's a key component in the countries like Singapore, where they always seem to be very high achieving with their maths and numeracy. And as we go through the school, we move on to pictorial methods. So we move on from the concrete through to the pictorial, so showing 10 frames, showing number buses, things like that, and eventually moving on to the more abstract, using the symbols that come with this strange subject. And we carry on with that all the way through. So even in Key Stage 2, with our ALN children or children who find it a little bit more challenging, then we would go back to using concrete and pictorial before we move on to the abstract. We also aim to provide them with as many strategies as possible for the same thing. So we will teach addition in a variety of ways so that they can find a way that really works for them. And we find tapas and things really good for that, to showing them a broad range of different ways of approaching things so that they settle on a method that works for them. And we also try and include as many authentic and real life experiences as possible so they can see maths in action and they understand how vital maths and numeracy skills are to prepare them for the rest of their lives. So I just mentioned at the bottom there, 2 of the ways we do that is through our enterprise project and through our cafe projects, which I will mention a bit later on and show you some photographs of those things that we have been doing. So this year has been one like no other. So all of the challenges we've had in the past somehow don't seem to be such a big deal anymore when we've been faced with 2020. And these are just some of the challenges that we've noticed, making sure all children were progressing, meeting the needs of those children with additional learning needs, trying to engage all our children if they're at home or if they're self-isolating. Not having that face-to-face contact has been really difficult, especially during the summer, and not having access to resources to give them, and the difficulty accessing assessment for learning. So how do we know how they've done? How do we know what the next steps are when we're not actually in the same room as them? So at the very beginning, when we first found out about school closures and we waved goodbye to them, having no idea when we were going to see our children again, we knew perfectly well where they were and what they needed to do next, and the things that we hadn't got around to teaching as the year being cut so short. In the first instance, we sent all our parents our regular weekly planning, but there was such an uncertain time for everybody. We soon found out that that was just too overwhelming for parents at that particular time. And so we quickly adapted it and came up with this weekly planning instead, which we moved over 2 weeks. So parents had this the weekend before. They could, if they wanted to, plan what they were going to be doing every day for the next 2 weeks, and everything they needed was given to them via Google Classroom. We soon realised that they needed to hear our voice, they needed to have some kind of interaction with us, so we started just filming little videos. I used my mobile phone to film just my hands, showing them how to do multiplication, for instance, using multiples of 10, and then included that as part of the weekly or fortnightly learning online. We then moved on to this planner when we started having children coming back at the end of June. It meant that the children could see, depending on which day they were coming in, they had certain contact day activities, and then they had follow-on activities for the day when they were home straight after. And then they also had other tasks to complete on the other days when they were working from home. And we found that this really worked well. We also found that if we had a whole school theme, that helped with engagement for families, because it meant that they could do something with all their children and everybody was involved, the whole family was involved. We had things like kindness cakes being baked, a VE Day feast being planned, and bunting made and decorations and things like that. So it meant that siblings, older and younger, could all be involved together with mum and dad, and we found that that worked really well. Meeting the needs of the children with ALN was really tricky. We still continue to work towards our targets on our one-page profiles. So we knew those children, we knew what they needed. And it did mean that quite often I would be emailing the parents directly with differentiated tasks. It's difficult because you don't want to put different work if it's specific to one child in with everybody else's, because you don't want them to feel any different. So I just used to send that separately, and then that would be emailed back to me directly. But we were still meeting the needs of them. Similar things like setting up individual accounts on Spelling Shed with spellings that were on one-page profile so that they could move on with what they needed to do. We also used accounts on Sumdog and Math Shed, setting weekly challenges that we could differentiate for them. So maths was still happening, but it was fun and engaging, and it wasn't just sitting down and doing pages and pages of calculations. It was trying to make it more fun for them. So trying to get our engagement, keeping our engagement. I think we all found that right at the beginning, engagement was quite good, and then as lockdown continued and went on and on and on, we were finding that it was getting harder and harder to try and keep some children engaged and doing the things we wanted them to do. We kept a daily log which showed if children had submitted work or if they'd been in touch just via the Google Classroom stream, if they'd been on Flipgrid, if they'd been on Sumdog or MathShed. So we just ticked a box and we knew that we'd heard from that particular child that particular day. It meant then that on the days where staff were in the building, that they could phone and get in contact with those children we haven't heard from, just to check that everything is okay. We tried to create fun and engaging activities, as I mentioned, for the whole family. We used things like measuring ingredients, collecting data in the garden regarding nature and bird watching and things like that. And we were measuring patios and gardens and calculating perimeters. And when the younger children, or the ones who needed that, we were thinking of some concrete things they could be using at home, like pasta pieces, or they could be using coins or anything pictorial they could go and collect, petals from outside, anything like that. And then with our older children, we found that these quizzes on Google Forms was a really good way of doing our on the boil, because we were really missing that daily on the boil, keeping things going, not forgetting things we've learned previously, by doing little daily quizzes. And we found that that was really good for engagement, and the children really enjoyed those. And you can set them up so that they self-mark, but you can also go back and mention to certain children, if, oh, Hanong, have another look at this one, or are you sure about this? It lets you do that, and just the individual child can see it. So that was a really useful thing that they've enjoyed, and we've carried on doing those, and we've come back sometimes as part of home learning over the weekends. Carrying on with our engagement and resources, following on from the little videos on mobile phones and things like that, we started to use the app Screencastify, and we used that to make really short films of ourselves teaching. We would make the lesson on Google Slides, and then we would use Screencastify to teach. It was only a 2 or 3 minute short video. We were just a little talking head in the bottom, but it meant that the children could see us, and we were actually teaching them, and they could see us doing the teaching. And then we could work through those slides and post those on Google Classroom for the children to see, and they really enjoyed those. We had lots of positive feedback from parents who were really relieved, I think, that the teaching element was taken away from them. We also used Flipgrid as a way of engaging the children and making little videos, and then they could see each other as well. And even as a teacher who was at home for a long period of time, seeing the children on Flipgrid just made my day, because I could see that they were doing okay. I could see them growing. It was just lovely and made me feel all cold and goosebumpy when I saw him. It was just lovely. So anything like that was really beneficial. As we were doing the work and setting it, we were still able to do an element of AFL. So this is showing something through a piece of work which was done via Google Classroom again. It's on a Google document. So I just asked the questions, the children then typed the answers onto the form. And in school, we highlight with yellow and blue. So we highlight in yellow the things which are going well, or that they've got correct, and we highlight in blue things that they need to look at again. We could still do that, and they're used to the yellow and the blue. So when we then return their work, they could see anything which was blue, and I could write a private comment as well. So I could ask the child to go back, have a look at those corrections, look at the ones which are in blue. And then when they resubmitted it, I could send them a new comment to say, oh, well done, much better, well done, Flip, keep going with that. And having that feedback from the teacher helps the children to feel valued and lets them see that actually they're they're doing really well, and having that positive praise is really important for all learners, and for adults as well. We like to know we're doing well and we're on the right track. So that was something which worked really well for us, and we're still using that every weekend as part of our home learning. So once we came back in the autumn term, we wanted to make sure all our learners were making progress, succeeding, still loving learning and feeling safe. We've made sure that we're following a single curriculum. So the children who are at home, who are isolating for whatever reason, they can still access the learning which is happening in the classroom. So they are being sent the same planning that we're following, just slightly adapted. They are having exactly the same resources sent to them all via Google Classroom, and as much online as possible to limit paper is what we're trying to do. But the children have got their own numeracy books, they've got their own LLC books at home and their own theme books, exactly the same as in school. So anything they do need to do on paper can go straight into their books, which they can then bring in, so they can carry on recording as if they were in class. Sometimes for maths you need that piece of paper and you need to show a calculation and you can't just type the answer in. So if that's the case and they've got those books at home, and parents can send us a photograph so we can see it digitally and give feedback that way. Here's an example of a blended learning folder. So for children who are missing for a week, if they're having to stay at home, then we can set up all our work here on the Google Classroom for them to access. After the summer term, as a staff, we came together and we were talking about resources we found really useful, and White Rose resources came up as something that lots of our staff found really good because they were offering lots of free resources during the first lockdown. And we found that they are using these teaching videos. So if actually there is somebody isolating, or if we did have to send a whole class home, which we hope we don't, the fact that we've now got access to those videos, we can then add those videos onto our blended learning, and the children have got somebody teaching them. So if we can't make screencastify videos for every lesson, we've got those as well, which we also use in class. So they're still seeing the same input into their lessons. We don't use it as a scheme, we just tap in and we use the resources as and when needed. What we did as well during the summer is we worked in little working parties to look at the new AOLEs and the new curriculum. And for the maths AOLE, we worked as a little group between us going through the different strands, and we tried to show how we could plan for this across the school and differentiate to show outcomes in every single year group. So if we could pick something straight out of the statements, then we wrote that down in bold. And if there was no statement for a certain year group we didn't think, then we were sort of differentiating it ourselves and filling in the gaps that we thought we needed. We also found that it was very useful to have the LNF links. So the LNF links are underneath in white. This has been brilliant for our planning. I know when I'm doing my planning every week, I go straight to this because it just seems to have all the information there I need for the progression steps and the descriptions of learning, and the LNF is all there in one place. So I think that that is going to be made available if you felt that that was going to be useful for you as well. Something we have been really passionate about at Raglan is our financial education, which we have been developing for the past few years. We were regional finalists at the Enterprise Troopers competition last year, which was a brilliant day out, and the children had a fabulous time when we were there. And we're currently gathering a portfolio of evidence because we're working for accreditation on the Young Money's Centre of Excellence in Financial Education programme, and we are incorporating that financial education throughout the school. So in a regular year, this was from last year, our classes are taking it in turns every half term to plan and run a cafe for an afternoon. So we're very fortunate to have the space in our school to open and run a community cafe, which is called In Keginvach. The class takes full responsibility, does all the planning, all the research, calculates the cost of all the products, works out how to make profits and things like that. They make menus and decorations. It's completely cross-curricular and new curriculum. It goes into everything throughout a couple of weeks of learning. The children absolutely love it because they get so much out of it and they see a real purpose in what they're doing. And then the profits afterwards we get to spend as a class. So last year we donated some money to Tea Haven and we bought some math resources. Actually, we bought some meter sticks and some trundle wheels and some other things with the money we raised. And we also paid for a workshop at a trip to aerospace in Bristol much earlier in the year. And they could see, you know, they felt that they'd earned that reward from all their hard work in the cafe. We also do a whole school enterprise week every year. We run it around this time of year because it's just perfect for getting ready for Christmas, buying people presents, buying decorations and things. We've just find it fits perfectly for us. Usually, again, the classes will completely go with this for a week or so and they will research the cost of their raw materials. They will think about how they're going to market their products. They will work out how much profit they could make and they will pitch their idea to our head teacher, who will then decide if they can have their initial investment or not based on their pitch. And then the children will design packaging, they will design the stall and things like that to try and get people to come in and visit their stall. They make videos that we put out on Twitter and Facebook to try and encourage people to come and buy their products. And again, it's really purposeful, really meaningful, and the children get loads and loads out of it. So when it came to coming back in September and we started thinking about our autumn term, we were thinking, right, we can't do our huge market sale in the hall this year, sadly, which we would normally do. So how can we possibly still do our enterprise, because it's such a big thing for the children and we love doing it as well. And we wanted to make sure we could still try and make things as normal as possible and include all these lovely activities that the children love and get excited about. So we decided not to let the pandemic stop us, and instead of just doing it for a week, we are running our enterprise project over about a month it's taken us. The children have still researched the cost of everything and they've still conducted their market research, but they created a prototype which was then photographed, and we created an online catalogue for the parents which showcased all of the products which are available. The children decided on the cost, how much to charge for their products, and that was all in the catalogue, which went home, the link digitally, and the parents were able to then go and visit the catalogue and have a look through everything which would be available, and it looked really amazing. It was made on Adobe Spark. So here's just an example of some of the products which we're making available this year. We've got some natural products, some wreaths, some table centres. We've got reindeer food in a bauble, we've got packs of gift tags, some wire trees and some festive lanterns that children are making. So to sell our products, we created an online form using Google Forms. We have printed the orders as they've come to us. We've then got an Excel document which has got all the different numbers in them, so we can see who's ordered what and how many of each product the classes need to make. We've had about 2 weeks to make our products, and it's something that we've been doing today. We're in the process at the moment. Parents are paying their total amounts via parent pay, so it's all digital. There's no cash coming in to be handled. And then we're going to fill the bags. We had a huge amount of bags last year from a workshop by NatWest, and we're going to reuse those and label those. And then we will just make sure that once all the products are in the bag, that they are quarantined for 72 hours before they are sent home. So parents are aware that by the end of next week, they should be getting their bags with all their lovely enterprise products coming their way. And I think that's about everything really. So if you'd like to ask any questions, I will do my best to answer them. Or if you would prefer to contact me at another time, then my email address is above. And thank you for listening.
Lovely. Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Have we got any? Oh, I know. Andrew, can you turn your mic on?
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Have we got any questions in the chat, anybody?
Yeah, George, we do have a question, a comment really and a question. The products look amazing, especially the gift tags. Can members of the public purchase them? So are these available?
They were available. I just took the form down yesterday. But if anybody would like to buy them, then just email me. The gift tags were 3 gift tags for, I think it was £1.80 for a pack of 3. They were our Year 5's enterprise product.
Lovely. Thank you ever so much, Angie. That was great. No further questions in the chat as yet, but if you do have anything, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we're more than happy to facilitate and help. And also, if you've got resources you think that we could help upload onto the site to help other schools, it'd be really appreciated as well, because we are aware of the pressures that's on schools from our end. Sue, I don't think there's anything else to add as yet.
No, Angie is very kindly sending over the material that sits behind this project, so we are in the process of uploading it to the Blended Learning Resource website, and again it will follow the same format of making a copy for yourself, so Angie isn't inundated with responses, but as it's coming in we are uploading it, so just check that website regularly, please.
Lovely, thank you ever so much, Sue. So without further ado, I'd like to say a big thank you to Sue, Cressy and Angie for presenting today, for you guys for bearing with us with our little bit of a technical issue, but we got there. And a big thank you to the AS team that does a lot behind the scenes to enable these webinars to run and run as smoothly as possible. And just a reminder, there have been previous webinars on all of the other AOLEs at primary and secondary, and those links can be found on the Supporting Our Schools website, as well as within the different elements of the team space that we have for different subject areas and through our network meetings. There is also videos that have been cut to link to the resources on the Blended Resources site, so you can see how to use them, because some of our schools presented in previous webinars, and there'll be post-webinar information again that will also have those additional links and things for previous webinars for you to look at. And if you have any further queries or contact, please don't hesitate to contact either myself, Sue or Cressy on the emails on the screen now. So huge thank you. It's soon approaching, so I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year if we don't get the chance to communicate directly with anybody before now and then that's here today. But thank you for listening, and we look forward to how things move forward from here.